Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 213 of The Reformed Gamers, the show all about theology, video games, and somehow persevering through punishment to make our mental health better. I'm your host, Logan, and joining me is, look, this has been a long time coming. 2022, almost said 2023, 2022 is the year of getting episodes done and recording that we were supposed to have done a long time ago. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see another handsome bearded man on the screen dancing, moving his head back and forth, getting his groove on. The troll master himself from the Facebook group, Jesse Knopp, is joining me on this episode. Jesse, say hello to the dear listeners.
Greetings. It's happened. I'm here. Thank you.
He's finally here, man. Dude, I'm excited. I think I'm super excited for a few reasons. One, you're on the show finally. Two, we're just going to talk about Dark Souls. And three, I'm sure there's a large number of listeners listening to this episode and going, are we about to get trolled for an hour and a half or however long this episode is? And to be honest with you, you might a little bit. We talked about this before recording a little bit of kind of what we were going to be doing on this episode. And we might just talk about Dark Souls for 5 minutes and then just share hot takes for the rest of the episode and just see what kind of emails we can get sent to the TRG email.
Is young.
It is young, and I don't know. It's just going to get worse or better. I don't know. Depends on your perspective, really. But Jesse, man, long-time friend of the show, long-time listener of the show, long-time admin of the group, man. Let me ask you, because I'm sure some people are curious, what is the key to enduring being an admin of the Tatooine of Facebook groups, so to speak? That is tier. Actually, I'm kidding. We're pretty tame. But what's the key to being a long-time admin, man? Do you have any secrets to share with anybody else out there that's like, why am I still an admin of the group that I'm an admin of?
Great question. There's honestly two big keys to this. The first is realizing that everyone else in the group is totally stupid. You're all a bunch of scallywags, you know? And rolling with that and also entrusting the rest of the team and knowing that it's not just me, but the rest of the admin team who are just phenomenal. And in sincerity for a moment, the, shouldering each other and each other's burdens and praying with each other. And when we need to have a vent session, venting when, we just need to hop into a room on the Discord and just totally rip everyone in the group a new one for acting a fool about political posts, or when we have those days where it's like, seriously, people, what do you eat?
I was going to say the most recent one where people are like, Aloy's face is fat. It's like, okay, guys, come on.
Did you look in a mirror?
It's like the post. It's like, dude, the post was about Call of Duty getting delayed a year. Like, it had nothing to do with Aloy. Like, what? Wow, man. What is it about Facebook bringing out the worst in people?
That conversation really, truly embodied that meme of the actually guy. Like, he just his very spirit came out into people.
Yeah. It was just bad. Right there. It was pretty bad. So yeah, all to say, if you join the Facebook group, and you act silly, we're bound to make fun of you at some point. Jesse's letting that out of the bag. To be fair, though, I think, let's be honest, I've thought about this. I've thought about tweeting this for a while now. And so I'm going to say this, and people listen, don't freak out. Okay, don't freak out, but I'm going to say this. The bad thing about social media is that it gives people a platform to say some incredibly stupid things, right? Kind of like me, for example, when I was sitting on Twitter going, Lord of the Rings is overrated. And I got my first ratio on Twitter. I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. This is kind of fun.
That's awesome.
So it is, it is what it is. I can dish it out and I can take it. It is what it is. But man, it's just, there's something, we can go down this rabbit hole another time, but like, there's something about Facebook specifically that tends to almost kind of bring out the worst in people. And I guess Twitter does the same thing. I guess all social media does the same thing, but man, it's just, it is wild. But despite people and their tomfoolery and their chicanery, which is a new word I just learned recently, we still love most of you in the Facebook group. Not all of you, but most of you.
We don't really make fun of everyone in the group. That was being silly.
Right. I do that in my journal that I keep to myself. Right. So I may upload that to Patreon at some point and let the dear listeners be like, oh man. Which I think the dear listeners got a little bit of that last episode. Was it? No, 2 episodes ago in the pre-show when me and Wesley were just kind of like, yeah, being a teacher kind of sucks. Like, oh man, there's so much bad stuff. And like these kids are crazy, and there people probably listening that were like, man, Logan's been a teacher for not even a year. And he sounds like he's ready to kick all of his kids out of his class. And it's like, for the most part, yeah, there's one class I can think of. But anyway, all that to say, dear listeners, we are in for a good time with this. And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, you're more than welcome to. But there's also a Discord. Links to everything will be in your show notes. And then Jesse will thoroughly initiate you into the Facebook group and have a good time with that there. So before we get into the show, just a quick reminder that secret links for this episode will be in your show notes. Be sure to check those out. If you're on YouTube, check out the description box. If you're listening on your podcast app, open your podcast app, check your show notes, and check out what the secret links are. I'm trying to have some fun with those. You never know what you're going to get with those. You're either going to get a really dope anime opening, like with Demon Slayer, which is a song that I still can't get out of my head, and or it might just be a goofy, funny video of watching, I don't know, Snoop Dogg rage quit on Dark Souls. I don't know. That may or may not be the secret link for this episode. I can't guarantee it, but just be sure to check those out and enjoy. They will always be safe for work. I can definitely say that because we're a good Christian podcast talking about Dark Souls. So I guess that's debatable depending on who's listening to this. But without further ado, let's get into the show proper with a little bit of what have we been playing. And Jesse, what have you been playing lately, my dude?
My 2 big games lately have been Ghost of Tsushima, finally going in.
Nice.
And I could wax poetic on that for hours. That has been just a trip. But also a very special game to me, Tales of Destiny 2 on the PlayStation 1. Or Tales of Eternia is the actual name, but Tales of Destiny 2 is what we got in the West. But a really killer retro title.
I saw you had put that in the show notes. It's like, I don't think I've ever heard of Tales of Destiny 2. And I'm looking it up now on Wikipedia. And the main character has like a blue sort of sleeveless tank top thing and red hair.
Yep.
And I think I remember seeing him somewhere before. Maybe it was like a classic outfit pack or something like that in another game.
He's an optional boss. I believe he's in Tales of Symphonia.
Okay, that's where I'm remembering it from then. Yeah.
I believe.
Okay, cool.
He is an optional boss in one of the Tales games.
Okay, right on. And you're a pretty big Tales fan, right? I feel like have you played all the games in the series or
all but one? There was one title on the PSP I was not able to get my hands on, unfortunately.
Is that Tales of Hearts R?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, that's one of the few that I've actually played. So,
nice.
Really, you haven't played that?
I have not. I didn't get a PSP until just like 2 years ago when a friend at church just gave me his PSP and all of his games for it.
Wow. Do you have a copy of the game?
No. Saving up. I keep like a weird little list of like retro games I still want to throw into the collection, and that's somewhere in that list.
Okay. Well, what are some other games on that list besides Tales of Hearts R?
Oh, snap. Wild
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Here we go. Wild Arms 5 is way up there. I do not have a copy of Wild Arms 5. There is Grandia Extreme is another one I've been looking for. And you can always go on eBay and get these, but they're a couple $100 on a good day. Excuse me. Those 2 are top. I do, and I feel so silly now. I want to get Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo again. I had a sealed copy that I sold a few years back, and I am really feeling bad about that.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. I've never heard, man, that kind of blows my mind a little bit. I thought you of all, well, I guess you did at one point you did have Chrono Trigger at one point, but you don't anymore. So
yeah,
it's a bummer, man.
A couple of the cartridges, no box or anything, and then I had a sealed one. and I sold them all.
Dude. Oh man, dang, dude.
I cried.
I don't blame you. I feel like some of our listeners might be crying too. If any of you dear listeners own a retro gaming store and you want to hook Jesse up, hook him up. Trust me. Despite the thorough lashing he gave to the Facebook group denizens earlier, he does love y'all and he is a good time. He's a good guy. He's well worth that.
I hate you all. I mean, you look lovely today.
I can't get over it, man. It's just funny because, like, I know your personality, but I know there's some people listening to this are like, wait, is he serious? It's like, I don't know. It's a Tuesday night.
We gotta keep them guessing.
We gotta keep them guessing. That's how we get you all on your toes and make sure that, like, when you're out on the internet, you don't take things too seriously, you know, because what's that Bible verse says? Don't listen too closely lest you hear your servant curse you or something like that. It's something along those lines. I don't know where that's at exactly. But what I do know... Do what?
I said it's somewhere in that Old Testament.
It's somewhere in there. I always bring it up from time to time, but something I do know exactly where it's at. This is a terrible segue into what I've been playing, but a little bit of what I've been playing, some Trails in the Sky second chapter, which really just a reminder to all of you that are listening to this, and maybe you're following me on Twitter. You're like, wait a minute, you finished that like a couple weeks ago or whatever. I'm recording all of March's episodes early, so that way I don't have to worry about them in March, because March is going to be a busy month for me for a lot of different reasons. So if any of this stuff sounds like a weird parallel universe or something, it's just because we're recording these super early. But if you are a patron, you got this episode like several weeks early. So if you want to be a patron, patreon.com/thereformedgamers. But I've been playing Trails in the Sky second chapter. I'm about 20 hours in at this point. And yeah, like I said, I think in the last episode, this game has fixed all the issues that I had with the first game. Really enjoying it. Love all the characters. Father Kevin, who's like this priest with a crossbow, is literally Vash the Stampede. Love him. He's an awesome character. Super cool. Have you ever played Trails in the Sky? Jesse, the look that you're giving me says you haven't.
I have played the first one and I rage quit that so hard.
Really?
And then you just said Vash the Stampede and something just peaked in me.
Yeah, dude. Did you finish the first one?
No. I am at the very beginning, and Austin Godot is probably like laughing so hard. He introduced me to the Legend of Heroes series, and I cannot for the life of me get past that first tower at the very beginning. I get crushed.
Really?
Like, I just get absolutely obliterated. And I've grew up like on Final Fantasy Tactics and like other tactical RPGs. I don't know what it is. I just get absolutely obliterated.
Huh. Wow. That's kind of surprising. Especially since, like, I mean, the orbment system's so similar to the materia system. I don't know, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I will say, though, that was my gripe about the first game, was that there's these major difficulty spikes that just come in out of nowhere. And it's like, what in the world? Thankfully, second chapter, I think it has those, but thankfully the game has an easy, normal, and hard difficulty setting. I've been playing on easy, so it's like,
nice.
I haven't really felt it. But yeah, still really enjoying it. Really enjoying that game. And then I also dipped into a little bit of Horizon Forbidden West. And I gotta say, it's all right. Like, I think my thing is, there's really nothing bad I can say about the game outside of like some minor technical issues. I'm just kind of like stuck in Trails in the Sky mode. Like, that's all I really want to focus on right now, to where it's like, I'll play Horizon here and there, but I'm just not sinking time into it, whereas my wife is really enjoying it, and that's really all I care about, because I mainly bought it for her. So as long as she's enjoying it, it's accomplishing its purposes.
Nice.
But yeah, I will say probably one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. I can definitely say that. It is a gorgeous game. My wife would agree with me. Aloy is a cute girl. Very cute protagonist. Also kind of noticeably, like, she's got an attitude in this game, and I'm like, I like it. At the same time, I don't, because you're kind of a jerk. So it depends on the situation. And I'm just like, man, Aloy, what happened to you in between the first and second games? Hopefully I'll find out as I continue playing. But who knows? Maybe by the time this episode releases to the public, I will have played and beaten Horizon Forbidden West. who knows? We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's as far as what I've been playing. Now, before we get into the topic of the show, quick reminder to rate and review the show on your podcast app of choice, iTunes, Spotify, whatever you're listening to. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy. But yeah, so something I had mentioned at the top of the show, this year is really the year that I've essentially gotten my ducks in a row, and we're getting these episodes done, recorded, put out that have been meaning to be recorded for either really now that I'm thinking about it, a couple of years now at this point. This one in particular is probably the longest one that has been in the making, as well as, you know, the Metal Gear Solid episode coming up a little bit later on this year that I'm working on assembling a group of people to talk about. But this is one that Jesse actually brought up to me several years ago. And I was like, man, we need to get you on the show to do this. And then I'll just be transparent. I completely forgot about it. And then when we were playing stuff, it just didn't happen. But now, like I said, this year, it's like I'm making good on all this stuff, getting it all together. And so today on this episode, you know, we're going to talk about Dark Souls, things like mental health and all that jazz. So just to warn you, as we're going into the topic, that, you know, if you struggle with things like anxiety, depression, all that stuff, you know, just here's a reminder to tread a little lightly going into this episode. Cause I mean, I don't know what people's triggers are, the things that are just going to upset them. So just know that going in. And then if you have any questions or anything like that, I'm sure you're more than welcome to talk to either me or Jesse. But as always, you know, talk to your pastor, talk to a counselor as well. There's nothing wrong with seeking a counselor. I've done it twice now, 2 or 3 times. And so, you know, just be sure to tread lightly as we go into this. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. And Jesse, I kind of want to actually let you describe a little bit of kind of what inspired you to bring this topic up and feel like wanting to share this with people whoever would be listening right now. So if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing a little bit about this topic, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, like Logan had said a couple of years ago, we were just in group discussing all kinds of stuff, all kinds of normal TRG shenanigans, as it were. And somebody had just shared in a comment that, you know, I believe it was a prayer thread, hey, you know, they struggle with anxiety, depression, felt alone, felt like, you know, nobody else really got it. And it kind of made me realize, you know, no, I get that. And kind of meditate. I meditated quite a bit on how the group had actually helped me a lot. I've made a lot of really awesome friends through Facebook, you know, through a Facebook group, which is kind of silly to think of, but also not. But just a group of people that we can really shoulder each other's burdens, and that no matter the physical, geographic distance between us, you know, we're still brothers and sisters in Christ. And I just felt totally compelled to share a post of, you know, something very, very reminiscent, I guess, to that feeling of aloneness. When my wife and I years ago lost our first daughter, McKenna, passed away. And, you know, I didn't really grasp just how that PTSD, that post-traumatic stress, hit me. I knew my wife was struggling, but I didn't really have that full comprehension of that. Nor was I properly grieving and processing that, and felt very much alone. I figured, you know, that'd be a really great story to share with the group. So I wrote something up, posted it in just hopes it would, you know, kind of invigorate some people, I guess you could say, or uplift some people in sharing that, you know, they're not alone. But kind of the back story to that was just, I was stuck on Sylph the wolf, that puppo, that crazy little doggo with the butter knife in his mouth. He like flips around all nimbly bimbly, you know?
Yeah.
I was stuck on him for so long. I was doing like New Game Plus or something, like something.
Oh, wow.
And doing a no armor run. So more or less, you know, you get hit and you die.
Yeah.
That was the gist of it. And I just was stuck, and I got angry, and I just straight up broke down, because this is at the height of, you know, where I should be going through healthy grieving of the loss of my daughter. And I just kind of broke down. I couldn't get past it. It seems so silly, to a normal person. It's like, wait, you legitimately cried because you died in a video game? You know what? Yeah, I did. Okay, you want to fight? Let's go.
Say, Dark Souls has a tendency to bring that out of you.
It does. But it did. I just kind of broke down and didn't really process anything, and it caused me to really just like take a step back and realize, dude, Jesse, you're medicating severe injury, like mental illness, with something that probably isn't helping. It's just you're rage inducing yourself. And there are times, don't take it out of context, gaming to help you kind of just kind of lay low and have that release is a great thing, but I wasn't doing the right thing, because then I realized, dude, you've been down here for like 6 hours trying to beat a puppy with a knife in its mouth. And you have a wife upstairs who is legitimately in just the darkest place she's ever been in her life.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And it did. So it's like, I look at it like, did Dark Souls kind of help snap me out of it a little bit or help get me some perspective? It kind of did to a point. I'm crediting the difficulty, because it made me realize, dude, like give up for a moment and go take sight of something a little bit more important. And I know that's probably not making much sense. I guess, I don't know. I was in a totally different frame of mind. It made perfect sense for me at the time, though.
Yeah. Well, no, just kind of listening to you talk about it, like I can definitely relate to that particular thing. Like, because, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit later on in the episode, but when it comes to gaming specifically, and specifically ones that really challenge you, I'm the kind of person where I just don't really talk about my feelings, right? I tend to keep a lot of stuff bottled up, and then it eventually explodes later. And, typically in the wrong scenario or the wrong situation. And then people are like, dude, I was just asking you if you wanted pickles on your burger, man. What's going on? You
this is
you
a
okay?
Wendy's, sir.
This is a Wendy's, man. It's like, dude, I just get paid minimum wage. I'm not your therapist. But like when I get in those situations where something does frustrate me, right? That's when it's almost like the floodgates open, and I feel like everything that I'm genuinely frustrated at. And then it causes me to take a step back and go, okay, I should not be this upset over the game asking me if I wanted to switch it down to easy mode. It's not that big of a deal, but like, you feel it. And I think there's something to be said about, because you mentioned how, you're self-medicating and kind of in a way almost closing the door to really dealing with those emotions and going through them. And, people do this with a lot of different things. Could be video games, could be anything. But what happens is when we do that is we don't really process those feelings. And I think for you, in a way, I think Dark Souls in a way did kind of open your eyes to that a little bit and go, this is like, sure, this is fine in its place, but right now it's not, from the sounds of things, it wasn't really helping you work through kind of what you had just been through, if that makes sense. Does that kind of sound like I'm tracking along with where you're at?
So that did make perfect sense. You're definitely tracking. It wasn't necessarily Dark Souls, like whether the lore, the plot, or the world, but more of just that egregious difficulty and repeatedly crushing me into the ground made me realize, I've been doing this for 6 hours. And I actually remember like getting so angry. It was like, dang it, I've been doing this for 6 hours. Why can't I beat this freaking dog? And it's like, oh wait, yeah, dude, you've been doing this for 6 hours. And just kind of snap my mind out of it, literally praise God. Because I needed to be upstairs with my wife. I needed to talk through this for both of us, because I was hiding down there too. And yeah, man.
So kind of, and really with this, I want to first of all thank you for coming on the show and sharing that, because I know stories like this are not always the easiest to talk about but I know that even though they're not the easiest to talk about, they're typically the ones that will affect the right people who need to hear it in that moment.
Sure.
And so I think that's kind of that's one positive to look at with this here. So, you talk about, you realized you're playing the game for 6 hours or something, kind of what was the process after that? Did you go talk to your wife? I mean, kind of how did it, kind of what happened afterwards?
Yeah, put the controller down. I don't even remember if I turned my PlayStation 3 off. I believe I just put the controller down after having my mental snap and went upstairs, and I came back, and I don't know. I'm thinking back on it now. I actually don't think I turned it off, and it turned itself off like it did the power saver mode or something like that. And I didn't pick that controller back up for like 3 days. Spent time, with my wife. We read our Bible a lot. Went back to church. We hadn't been back to corporate worship in a good couple of weeks. We were definitely hiding out. And I think that was kind of part of the turnaround for me. And it was something little, right? And that's how it happens with, as much as something little can trigger a response that's negative in mental illness, the little things can also trigger multiple, chain reactions in that, I was able to snap out of it for a second, and all it took was that second for me to go upstairs and, grieve with my wife. And we grew a little closer. We talked through a bunch of feelings for the next few days and some darkness, and fought it together with God. And then suddenly, hey, we're back at church, trying to go back to church. And we went. It sucked, and that's the other thing I'll say for anyone going through anything truly traumatic. It's not abnormal to fear going out in public for a while, that's normal. That's not, that is totally a symptom of the trauma. So definitely don't beat yourself up. Don't beat your words are hard. Golly. Don't beat yourself up on that. That's
Well, and I think that's good advice too, because I mean, there's times where like when you're going through something, like you do need that time to kind of not just be by yourself in a reclusive sense, but be by yourself to really process a lot of the stuff that's going on, and really just have some time to yourself to kind of heal a little bit. Like, you listen to you talk about this. This isn't comparative in regards to kind of what y'all had gone through, but I'm just thinking through some of the stuff that I've been through. Like last summer when I was transitioning out of ministry and into a different job, I was sitting there. I just didn't really want to be around people, to a degree, and just being open and transparent. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to be around church people because I had been hurt by people in the church. And I'm like, I want to make it clear. I've always been try to careful when I say this, when I say, I don't want to say I've been hurt by the church as a whole. It's just, there was a few select people that were like, oh dang, man, I thought we were good, but apparently we're not. And that kind of hurts a little bit. And so it put me in this mindset of like, I don't want to be around people right now, and I don't really want to be around church. And then it didn't help either that right in the midst of this last summer, I lost my grandmother, and I'm like, dang, so
one after
now
the
it's
other.
like, it's like, now I definitely don't want to be around anyone because, there's just a lot of hurt. And so what do you think, to kind of go a little bit of a different direction here, is why do you think, because I know for me, when it comes to dealing with stuff, again, I don't talk about stuff as much as I should. Who knows? Maybe this episode will be a nice little therapy session for me. Because I have a hard time talking about stuff. I have a hard time dealing with stuff. I want to do the self-medication thing and just kind of ignore it. Why do you think we as just humans tend to lean towards that, where we and maybe it's not even like a conscious thing, but why do you think we lean more towards ignoring it and hoping it'll go away instead of going through the pain and really processing it?
Yeah. And that's that's a heavy question, and quite frankly, a really good one. But I think as people, as man, you know, we crave comfort above all else, especially when we're faced with any sort of challenge. We want comfort. Stuff sucks. Life sucks. Life is hard. And we want either the easy way out, or we want the comfort maybe from maybe somebody or something that kind of relates. And this is all super ironic because we're talking about Dark Souls, right? And I think that actually Dark Souls resonated with me in the midst of this, because I had already beaten the game. I beat Demon Souls, played all the old school OG King's Field, Elden, Eternal Ring games, all those. But what was it about Dark Souls is you were like, you were so alone in that game, right? Yeah. Everything was bleak. And you're on this adventure, but everything about the atmosphere and the world you're in, and oh, hey, look, there's another person in this game that is, like every NPC in that game was a giant jerk. Like they were sarcastic, or they were like, and that was, that's life. So for me, I sought at that time, I really wanted someone, or in this case, I think subconsciously, I wanted something that could relate that to. And I think honestly, if I'm doing kind of some weird psycho self-analysis or whatever, that's kind of what Dark Souls did for me, is I wanted the comfort of something that related. And that's, that Dark Souls is mental illness in video game form, if we're being totally frank.
Oh man, it's funny that you mentioned that, because as you really think through the games, I'm thinking through the games now, and I've played really every game in that series. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten one, and I don't think I have. A lot of the characters are, like you described, they are either sarcastic, they're creepy, they're brooding, they're what's the word? Maybe not antagonistic, cynical would probably be a better word.
Great word.
And a lot of the side quests that you do with these characters, from my experience with the few side quests that I've actually taken the time to do, tend to bring about some kind of joy or redemption to these characters, where they feel a little bit more at peace and they go through the struggle. Like the one that I can think of most recently, and probably my favorite one, is actually in Dark Souls 3, when you meet Sigurd, the kind of onion armor dude. His whole thing is, which by the way, Sigurd is probably my favorite side character in any of the games. Yes. I can't do his voice, but man, he's just so good. But like anytime he shows up, it's almost like a breath of fresh air in this dark, desolate world. But when you go down his side quest and you see that his main goal is to cut down his old friend who got corrupted by darkness, you realize, man, this is a tragic character. And the last thing that he wants to go out doing is by being the one that slays his old friend, because that's the promise that he made to him. Yeah. And it's poetic. It's beautiful to a degree, because he wants to be there for his friend, even in the times where he probably would rather not. But it's just a good picture of, what's the word? Integrity and friendship to a degree. And I think his friend even understands this, and I think he even told them this. There's a dialogue thing that comes up, but that's kind of the part of the course for the whole game, really, in all the games, is that you have these characters that are dealing with it. And so I don't know. I know for me, these games, maybe I'll get into this a little bit later, maybe now, but I've noticed when I was telling my wife about the episodes we had lined up, right, I was telling her that we're going to be talking about Dark Souls, mental health, and all that. And my wife just kind of laughed, and she's like, it's funny, because every time you've gone through a big, like, ground shaking moment in your life where there's been hurt or depression or change or something, I remember you always playing a Dark Souls game. And I'm like, really? And I stopped and was thinking about it, going back through all the games. It's like, I have. Yeah. That's weird. And so I think probably what you're bringing up is probably why I gravitated towards those games during those times, because like you said, trying to find people to relate. So in a weird way, it's almost like we're self-medicating by avoiding people, but we're still encountering people that
Right.
to a degree understand what we're going through and might be going through the same thing, just in a digital format. So I guess that kind of makes me think of this, man, about, can escapism be good when we're dealing with things like this? Can they maybe bring us to a better understanding of some of the things that we're going through? Because it sounds like maybe in a indirect way, Dark Souls did that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't want to pull out the cliche of, it was just God leading me. No, I mean, he uses things outside of just him waving his sovereign hand. He uses things that are made by men. And for me, yes, absolutely. Like, I just realized, dude, either I'm really bad at this game or I need to shut it off and go like snap out of it, go on a walk, or in this case, go talk to my wife, who I haven't talked to for 6 hours. And knowing that just like 3 weeks ago, our first daughter passed away. Like, where are my priorities? And so, yeah, God, he certainly used that stupid dog, man. I can't, the stupid spin move it does every time.
Yeah. Always spins and like it's jumping backwards as it's doing it.
It's like frolicking, but laughing at you because it just like crushed you harder than John Piper crushes his hand gestures. Like straight up, he's all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a very apt description. So, I guess, and dear listeners, I apologize if this episode's kind of feeling all over the place. I'm just trying to like think of things as we go through them. But like, you because I think some of our listeners, I know there's some of our listeners that listen to the show that are not Christian, and they're probably hearing you talk about how you're going through a situation where you just lost your daughter, but you're talking with your wife, you're praying, you're going to church. I'm sure there's probably some people that are listening to this and they don't understand how going through something like that and coming out of it going, God is still good. Right. Do you think you could, and again, I don't want to push you into talking about things that are maybe too heavy or anything like that, but do you think maybe you could kind of share as to how you and your wife kind of weathered that storm and got through the storm and still found yourself saying essentially what the song says, you give and take away, but still I will praise your name.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reiterate the apology for us bouncing around. This is what you get for inviting me on the show, man. You didn't think I was going to stay in a straight line on this. But back to it. So we didn't actually see, and I know that's such a loaded topic, especially in today's world when you can look at anywhere, any form of media. You can look out your window, you can go get in your car and like drive 3 miles and you can just see like something bleak, right? There's that constant question, how can there be a God who is just and gracious and merciful and good when that is the constant? And we didn't see it. My wife and I, truly, that was a big question for us for weeks, if not months. We were straight up angry at God through this and very much separated ourselves from anything to do with him for weeks, if not months. It wasn't until later when we went, I had my breakdown with Dark Souls and spent a couple days with my wife. We ended up going back to church. And we spent that time in those little increments of improvement led to us getting to a point where we could start to grieve as a couple in a healthy manner. And eventually our shepherding pastor, so our church has an entire ministry headed up by a shepherding pastor dedicated to, mental illness and counseling and dealing with grief, or we have this is where we saw God's goodness eventually, is this spun up a whole segment ministry in that, for mothers who and fathers, for parents who had lost a child, because there was another couple in our church who just the week before, they lost a son in a very similar fashion.
Oh my gosh.
And we didn't have anyone else in the church who really was at a place to be able to, come beside them and help them, whether they just hadn't experienced losing a child, or if they weren't in a mentally stable place at the time to be able to do so. So we were asked to come beside these two and, grieve together. And it didn't, even still with this, we didn't see God's goodness for like a year, because eventually my wife and I were sitting there and we were having dinner with these two and realized, hey, we became really good friends. And through this, it spawned a ministry within our church. We have a church of over 2,000 members, so we're a good sized church. Over 200 women have been ministered to on a regular basis who have lost a child. And it spun up because my wife and her BFF started this ministry because of it. So we had other people, and then and I definitely won't belabor the point of what happened with our daughter, but there was medical negligence at a local hospital. And had it not happened, that medical negligence there would have been a continued trend from this hospital, because it had happened lots and lots and lots. And we had submitted to the medical review board of the state of Wisconsin to investigate this, because there's just too much, right? Too much was wrong with how that whole, and again, I won't break into that because that'll be long, but it led to a partnership with our primary hospital and this other hospital who wronged us, to change the entire policies on how they review certain things. And then my wife was asked to go to Rockford, Illinois, and go before the Illinois State Senate and share our story of what happened and how the partnership between these two hospitals could have helped us. And she became, like, my wife became the face of one of these hospitals, and they actually built a hospital in Rockford, a huge new one. It's called Javon B. Hospital. And my wife got to be part of that, which has a special center for pregnant women who are preterm, and it's the only one in the area. And all of that. So, long-winded, right? But if we circle back to it, where was God's goodness? His goodness was in, yes, did we lose our daughter? Sure. And nothing is going to change that. But we have two amazing friends that came out of it. We have a ministry that God has used to help hundreds of women and families. There is a church, there's a hospital that exists now, in a partnership which is helping thousands of women, pregnant women every year, who are like at preterm risk that didn't exist before. So, it was truly eye-opening for us to kind of take a step back and see, holy crap, Lord, like, it truly humbled us. Like, you always hear the cliches of, there's hard times, but God is still good. You hear the modern, like the Bethel worship songs, and he's so good, he's so right. But they don't reflect the true nature of that in what his majesty and in that he can do. So anyone listening, like, that's just an example. That's just like a speck of sand in the vast desert that is what he can do within his goodness. So there you go.
Yeah. Is it, I always feel weird in saying that, despite, like, I don't know, I don't even know how to phrase this. I'm really bad with words, imagine that. But is it weird to think, or to really phrase it in such a way where it's like this really terrible, traumatic moment in y'all's life that, while really tragic, there, because of what happened, there's good that came of it. Is that a weird thing to say, or is that like disrespectful or anything like that?
No, I don't think at all that it's disrespectful, but I think it's honestly dependent on where the person is in their grief process in that scenario.
Right.
If you would have said that to me when I was, down in my basement playing Dark Souls for 6 straight hours, I probably would have backhanded you with like a cheesy gordita crunch from Taco Bell or something.
You would have done a spinning back slash thing like the dog did. Yeah. No, I understand. I don't blame you. I probably would have done it to myself.
Right. But now, like, I look now at where I have that better, wider perspective on how God used it, and I could say yes without a shadow of a doubt, unequivocally.
Yeah, right on, man. That's what's, I gotta say, it's kind of interesting to be doing some of these episodes this year where we've had people really sharing their faith a little more openly on the show, and get some different voices in here and just kind of share some of your experiences. And my hope is that kind of, helps some people that are listening to this kind of maybe think through some things or whatever it may be. And so I hope that it helps, because from the sounds of y'all's situation, you and your wife and really your church have started this ministry to help others.
Yeah.
And as I think through that, it ironically goes back to this point of, maybe not ironically, but it goes back to this point of how, in our grief, we don't want to be around people. Right. But what's interesting about some of the situations that we go through, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, hey, you went through this terrible experience, that's a good thing. I'm trying to like, what I've noticed is that when you go through situations in your life, particularly dark times or heavy times, it allows you to be there for others who are going through a similar situation, who probably don't want to be around people either. And I think part of that is because they don't think anyone else can understand.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of this. I feel like I've revisited this topic enough times with people in my own personal life. I don't really need to put it online. But what I can say is that last year when I was transitioning out of ministry, there's a lot of just really dark moments, just moments where I'm like, what is happening? Like, why is this happening? It didn't make sense. And there's a lot of hurt. There's definitely some feelings of betrayal there. And I was thinking, there's no one that's going to understand any of this. There's no one that's going to understand how it feels to have people that you thought you could trust in church betray you, essentially. And when we started going to this church that we're going to now, that we actually just became members of,
nice.
I was like, no one here is going to understand this. Like, I'm the odd man out. I don't belong here. I feel like I shouldn't be here. And then just in talking to the head pastor, he was like, dude, the same exact thing happened to me. Let's talk about it a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay. So someone does understand.
Yeah.
And even just talking with him, he was sharing, a lot of our people that come to our church, a lot of them, maybe not a lot of them, but a good percentage of them have a history of being burned by a church or by people in a church. And so for them, it's kind of hard for them to want to come to church. And so I think it gives our church a unique perspective and understanding in ministering to people like that. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, for the longest time, I didn't want to be in a church. Really, I'll just be honest, dear listeners. I think around July, maybe August, I was kind of like, just being transparent. It's kind of like, screw church,
Sure.
I don't want to go back to this and potentially be hurt again. But there was a part of me in the back of my head going, that is the complete wrong thing to do. Don't just stop going to church. That'll make your situation even worse.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is when I push myself through to kind of actually get back into church and kind of wrestle with those feelings of hurt and try to heal, it's always turned out good. I thought going to my small group, I was like, I don't fit in here. I'm a nerd. I'm into gaming. I'm into model Gundams. I'm into anime. No one here is into it. But I remember the first night I was there, I had my phone sitting out and I had a Samus case, of course, because, got to represent Metroid. And someone sitting there was like, "Oh, dude, is that Metroid?" And I'm like, or no, what did he say? He actually said, "Oh, is that Samus from Metroid?" And I'm like, "You know what this is?" He's like, "Oh, yeah, dude, I played Super Metroid growing up. That's a great game." And I was like, okay, my wall's coming down a little bit. Right. But it was a slow progress. Here we are, fast forward to, a couple of weeks ago. And after small group, we were sitting around talking about Lord of the Rings, Marvel movies, the Silmarillion. And I'm like, y'all are a bunch of nerds. Y'all are my people. But you wouldn't think that just from looking at them, because they're all like, buff military dudes. And, but we were sitting there talking for 20 minutes about Brandon Sanderson's book and fantasy books and video games and all that. And I'm just like,
great.
It's this thing of like, we think we don't need people, but it's in those moments that we need them the most.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if we take the time to stop, maybe have that moment where we take a step back from the dog with the butter knife trying to kill me, and go, wait a minute, what's really going on here? What am I like zoned out from? What do I have blinders onto? And I know for me, like I don't know. And I think you could agree, man, going through grief or hurt or whatever it is, it's not an easy process,
Not at all.
but it is a process. Right. And I know for me, I'm slowly getting over it. Slowly healing and like, okay, I'm a little better now. I can kind of start trusting people again. But it's hard to get there. Right.
Yeah.
So for you, man, obviously going to church and being there with your wife, is there anything else that you could probably share about maybe a bit of encouragement to someone, or maybe some things that kind of helped you like work through this, maybe not get through it quickly, but work through that particular situation?
Yeah. There was a couple, quite frankly, I started confiding in people and talking instead of keeping it all bottled up.
Man, what a concept.
Yeah, right. I'm sitting there mentally like unstable, and I have some weird, brilliant idea that if I keep it quiet and keep it to myself, it's just gonna work out peachy.
Yeah.
But no, I started talking, just being transparent and sharing with my wife how I felt. And then you had mentioned it earlier, but counseling, don't ever feel like that means you're like broken or messed up to the point and you should be embarrassed. No, that's like saying, if you've got a headache, take some Tylenol and then being embarrassed that you took Tylenol for a headache. No, you have something you need to cope with. Something is not right. Seeking, proper help for that in whatever form is needed. And in my case, I started talking, that shepherding pastor, who's now one of my best friends, and he's one of my pastoral mentors in ministry. That was hugely valuable to have him come beside me and my wife. And then also, and this sounds so weird, like it's out of a weird, like hippie vegan magazine, but I know this is going to sound weird to gamers. Drink water. Like, for real. Like, they're all looking at this like, what is this water?
What?
They push their glasses up. What is this water he's talking about? That doesn't come in Mountain Dew flavor. But no, like, it's so silly, but like water helped me as well. And I don't know, like, drink more water, go on a walk and get a little exercise, and talk, and don't just talk to people, talk to God. You may not want to, and you had said that. I was in that place too. Like, I don't have anything to do with church. I don't have anything to do with God right now. Look, I know in the Bible he's sovereign, which means his hand is in all of this. Why would I want to talk to somebody who, but that as well, like, humbling yourself to a point and saying, hey, let's, I don't know how to word that. I don't want to say like, hey, let's mash this out, God, because then, we're talking about reformed gamers here. The reformed people are going to get like, of course. but I don't know. But yeah, talk.
No, I think
don't be alone.
I think you're definitely onto something. And the whole talking thing is something, again, I'm not good at. I actually told my small group this the other night. I'm like, I'm not good about talking about my feelings. So if you see me just sitting here brooding one night, you should probably like shoulder me or elbow me. I'm like, dude, come on, let it out, you know? But I agree with that wholeheartedly. I've noticed that when I'm going through something, if I just talk about it, it doesn't make the pain go away. It doesn't make the problem go away, but it definitely helps. It definitely alleviates some of the pressure a little bit. And really just talking with people who just maybe don't know exactly what you're going through, but will just be willing to listen is huge. You know, I think that's a good thing for some of people who are listening to this, maybe wondering, you know, hey, I'm not going through a really rough season, or I'm not going through anything tragic, but you know, what do I do when my friends are? It's really, if you're just there and you're willing to listen, that's huge. And it's something I even want to bring up too, because I've talked about this before on the show multiple times. I'm a huge advocate, supporter, whatever you want to call it, of counseling, because that's a good way to do it. And depending on your church, you may have someone on staff that is licensed to do that. Like that's what they do. Or your church might be networked with a local practice that can set you up with something. And then, you know, maybe if you're not going to church, something that you can still look up different places around you. And a lot of them do online now, and just working through that. But the thing is too, I mean, you talk about water. My big thing here lately is actually working out. Like, you know, if I have frustration or I have those kind of like what I call a downward spiral thinking, it's like, I'm just going to work out and like lift heavy things and then, you know, scream or whatever, and just let it all out, as crazy as that may sound. But it actually works, because there's something, I don't know the science behind it, so you'll have to look this up later. But there's something that it does where it just kind of like resets your brain a little bit, you know? So even exercise, heck, even me lately, like getting into model Gundams, which I'm looking at my desk here, and I'm like, I probably should slow down on building these. They're starting to take over. I don't have enough room for all these.
No, you need more. No, you need more.
I did actually just order my master grade death scythe, so I'm like, I'm gonna build that. So probably by the time this episode was built it. But it's just, this is probably the most unconventional episode of this podcast we've ever done, because literally we're telling you to do everything but play video games. But it's just, I don't know. I don't want to sit here and assume that all of our listeners are, you know, entrenched in video games and using escapism to the highest degree, because I don't think that's true. But man, there's times where like stuff happens in life and you just got to put the controller down, because you got to do something about it. And you know, it's, don't get me wrong, I like video games as much as the next person. Heck, I made a whole podcast about it that I've been doing for 7 years. You know, of course I like video games. But there's times, like I said, and I hate it when my parents told me this, you know, you gotta put the video games down. There's more to life. I'm like, I know, mom and dad, shut up. But they're on to something, man, you know? And I think, you know, Jesse, you had one of those, maybe not exactly one of those moments, but you had that moment where it's like, I'm going through something really tough. I just don't need to be doing this right now, you know? And you went and you spent time with your wife, and you guys prayed together, and you guys sought after God, and you went to church and opened up to people who thankfully were there and listened. And that's what you got to do sometimes, you know? And that's the same thing. I don't know what the same thing is. I lost my train of thought there, but that's what you got to do sometimes. Sometimes your own mental health is more important than, I don't know, beating down the dog in the cemetery that's trying to get you with a knife, you know, or whatever it may be. And it's one of those things where if you listen to this show, watching on YouTube, are in a season where you're playing games and you're just like, I'm just not feeling this for whatever reasons, spend some time trying to figure out what that is all about. Maybe maybe you just had some bad Taco Bell, even though there is no such thing. Maybe the person making it though didn't prepare it like they should have. You know, that happens. But it's something to talk with other people about. Thankfully, as Jesse said at the beginning, the TRG community is really good to talk about these things. Again, there's certain things you do need to talk about with your pastor, a counselor. There's some things the TRG community is not meant for. It's not meant to be a replacement for your church. It's not meant to be your counselor or anything like that, like a licensed psychiatrist or anything like that. You do need to go see those people. But for some other things, just going through a really hard time in life, there's people there that undoubtedly have probably been in your shoes at some point, and they can help you through it to a degree. And so I'm not trying to like solicit or advertise for the group. I'm just saying at the end of the day, bottom line, we still need people, even though it doesn't feel like we do. Those moments where we feel like we want to be alone and we don't want to be around people are oftentimes the times where we need people the most. And thankfully there's plenty of people that are there.
Yeah. And it brings up something else and I kind of alluded to this earlier, don't be stuck in any type of mentality where you feel as though it is better for you to go it alone, or it will help you grow more, or, your success will be greater if you've succeeded it alone. If we're talking, let's use a Dark Souls analogy, and I'm going to spill the beans. I needed help in every playthrough, every new game plus with Ornstein and Smoke. I never soloed it. It is okay. And I know all the hardcore Souls nerds are like totally like ripping hair out and like tearing their robes and like raging right now. It is okay to summon other players for boss fights, you dweebs. And it's the same thing. It's okay to seek help is what Logan and I keep hammering into this. Get help. Get people around you. And Well,
I was gonna say that even goes to why am I blanking on his name? He's one of the like most iconic characters in the series.
Solaire of Astora.
Thank you, Solaire. That's his whole thing is jolly good cooperation, right? In a weird way, Dark Souls teaches you a lot about life, right? The times where life's just really beating you down, you need to just take a break, right? You need to take a break, go handle some things, and then come back to it. There's times where you need help, right? And that's one of the things. It's one of the things I never. This is a side thing, but this is something I never understood about some people within the Dark Souls community. Were like, you need to solo the bosses. You need to get. It's like no, the multiplayer is a mechanic in the game. You're supposed to help people. The whole game is like built around that, where you're leaving signs on the ground and using summoning sigils and all that stuff to bring people into your game to help. That's like a big part of Dark Souls, is being there for other people and not being a total tool. Although you can be that, but people don't really like you when you're like that, And so and it goes back to really this, man. Something else I want to hammer, or not really hammer on, but touch on, is God uses some weird things to get you back to him, right? I mean, when you read the Bible, God is not like, it's not like this is outside of God's wheelhouse, right? He used a pillar of fire to guide Egypt, or the people of Israel, through the desert in Egypt, right? He used like Jesus, who people didn't expect to be the ransom for many, to die on the cross for our sins. And it just baffles people even to this day. So it's not outside of God's wheelhouse to use a hobby of yours or even a video game to be like, yeah, you don't need to be doing this right now, And so something that I even was thinking about kind of going into this episode was just how, and I think I mentioned this on a prior episode, I can't remember which one it was, but there's times where I was going into this new teaching position and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never taught robotics. I've never taught digital art. I don't even know what principles of technology is. I'm not good at physics, right? And I was like, why? Like, I'm going to get started in this job. I'm going to fail. It's going to mess up. It's going to be dumb. And then as I was playing Sekiro, I was fighting that stupid monkey that flings poo at you, right? And I was sitting there and I was fighting the boss and I was just like, No, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. It wasn't the monkey. It was Sekiro's mentor / dad person, the owl character, which is this crazy fight the first time you do it. But I was sitting there thinking, like, I went into this fight, had no idea what to expect. And here I am still standing because I just beat him. It took a lot of tries. It took a couple days. But this is the same thing with this thing. God has brought me to this point. It's going to be hard. I'm going to learn. I'm going to make mistakes. And that's okay because God brought me to this point and I'm going to get through it. The same way I've gotten through all these bosses in this game so far. It's been hard for sure, but that doesn't mean I'm not where I'm supposed to be. And so, I don't know, man. God uses a lot of different things to kind of get our attention, to get us to really draw our thoughts back to him if we just take the time to pause and pay attention to kind of what he's doing. And so, I don't know. I feel like we could keep going, but really the main thing that I kind of want to stress to people is that, if you're hurting, it's okay to take a break from whatever hobby it is to just deal with that thing. And I don't mean deal with as like a brush it off kind of thing, but like really wrestle with it and come to terms with it and be around people and talk to people and maybe get plugged back into your church that you haven't been to in a while. I don't feel like I'm rambling at this point here, but I hope it helps. Jesse, do you have any kind of closing thoughts or anything you'd like to share that maybe wasn't shared prior or anything that's come to mind since?
No, you really kind of hammered that at the end, and it, quite honestly, it's not rambling, but it's this is real talk,
Yeah.
Not what you'd expect on a podcast like this. So
yeah,
I would say, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, if anyone needs somebody to talk to, reach out. I'm definitely around. I can't empathize with every struggle you may be going through, but I'll be there to pray with you, and I mean, that's literally what the church is for. And if you're not, like you mentioned, there's some people who wouldn't call themselves believers. That's okay too. Reach out.
Yeah.
I'm still another human being then. Let's talk. But yeah, don't sequester yourself into like this fortress of solitude. There's no need to be alone when the one thing you need the most is to have people to support you.
Right. Yeah, definitely, man.
Eddie.
Definitely. So there you go, dear listeners. Despite what Jesse said at the beginning, he doesn't actually hate you, but he does like to keep you on your toes. So, no. Oh, man. But anyway, dear listeners, we kind of start bringing this episode to a close. Again, Jesse, I just want to thank you, man, for taking the time to come on the show, share some of your story, because I know that is not easy. And I am sorry for y'all's loss, but I am thankful that you're where you're at now mentally and spiritually, to where I really think you're huge benefit or a huge help to other people who are going through some similar things. And it's just, it's going to help a lot of people, man. And I appreciate you coming on the show to share that with others. So hopefully that's helped some of you. But before I let you go, man, some recos, some things that well, actually, no, I'm skipping ahead on a couple things. I feel like I haven't done this. I feel like I haven't done this show in a while, even though it's been literally a week since I last recorded. I should know how to do this. But anyway, a couple of different things we got to do first before we leave is I love how we have a working document on this show, and it just people type in it and it throws me off. Shout out to Josh Broccolo for doing that a couple episodes ago. But one of the things I want to do is shout out our patrons who have supported us over on patreon.com, who have allowed us to continue to do what we do here at TRG throughout the month of March. And those people are Alex Castellanos, Brandon, I am sorry if I am butchering your name, Brandon Buenacorsi, I think that's right, Cassie, Chris Freeman, Christopher Commander, Daryl Tavares, David Henderson, David Matthews, Derek Smith, Jake Walker, Jeff Jackson Jr., Jimmy Chonga, Jonathan Harrison, Josh Broccolo, Kiefer Winborn, Kokoro Daki, Luke Strain, Mark Kozlowski, Matt Edwards, Matthew White Chocolate McDougal, Matthew Millsap, Melvin Benson V, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Mr. Butts, Nate McKeever, Paige Penson, Retro Rewind Podcast, Ryan1701E, Sam White, Savone Pena, Third Strongest Mole, Travis, Vincent U, Weatherman Keith, Wesley Ray, and Xavier Medina. I will never not laugh when I get to Mr. Butt's name. It's just funny, man. It's so random. Like, I know it's there every time, but I always laugh at it because it's funny, man. It's just funny. Anyway, so patrons, thank you so much for continuing to support us over on patreon.com. It allows us to continue to do what we do here at the show. It allows us to get games for the show, to do content like on YouTube, which I'll get into here a little bit later. But some recos, some things you should check out. Jesse, man, what are some things that the dear listeners should check out?
Y'all know I'm going to say Elix too. It's coming. My
goodness.
I hope y'all are ready.
Oh, my goodness.
And everyone Logan has played it. He played the first one, and he recorded something on it, I believe. And he made a promise. That's all I'm going to say. Otherwise, if you are a Dark Souls fan, I'm going to highly recommend you hit the OG games, the Kingsfield series. Imagine if you would the difficulty of the hardest boss fights of Dark Souls and amplify that, because Kingsfield is like that, set in a similar world, first person. And you don't have the ability to turn and look like with little like thumbsticks. You have to use your shoulder buttons to like adjust the camera up and down and left and right. Just picture that if you would. Otherwise,
that sounds painful.
It's awesome. It is so good, and it's not online. You can't get help. It's your solo through the whole game.
So it's like Sekiro. Okay.
And yes, sir. And a book I have been going through. It's a commentary on Romans called The Righteous Shall Live by Faith by the late, great R.C. Sproul. Definite Reco from Ligonier Ministries. Not a sponsor, but they could be.
They could be. I did reach out to them once and I was like, hey, Table Talk, how's about? And they're like, we're actually not looking to do that right now. I'm like, oh, okay, fair enough. Well, yeah, if you guys want to sponsor us, Ligonier, let me know. As far as my recos go, it's funny you brought that up because, like, I've been sitting here thinking for the last couple of weeks leading up to this recording. I'm like, I was supposed to play Elix and upload it to YouTube, and I haven't done that yet. So hopefully by the time that this episode releases to public feeds, that will be on YouTube, and you will get to go check it out, and you will get to enjoy it, or at least laugh at my misery. I don't know what to expect out of this game, but you guys can look forward to that. As far as my recos go, I feel like a broken record at this point because the only real recos I have are no. You know what? Okay, I'm gonna say one reco that y'all have heard before, and then or maybe you've heard it before. I don't know if I brought this up or not on the show. But I'll bring up one reco and then I'll bring up one that I haven't brought up in a while. The first one is if you're looking for a book series to read and get into and you're into sci-fi, let me recommend you. That feels weird to say. Let me reco you Brandon Sanderson's Skyward series. There's about 4 or 5. So there's 6 books in the series as of right now. The 4th mainline book in the series comes out next year, 2023. And that is Skyward. So check it out if you're into space, alien, sci-fi, and all that stuff. Definitely go check that out. I've been reading the side books. Like you read the first 2 books, and then there's like these side books that are in between book 2 and 3. And they're just as good as the mainline books. It gives you more lore. It fleshes out different parts of kind of what's going on between the books. It gets you more in-depth or not in depth, but it gets you to see the characters a little bit better under a different light and get to understand them better. It's just good writing. I'm convinced at this point, Brandon Sanderson cannot write bad. He's just really, really good. So if you're into that, definitely check it out and enjoy it, especially if you have a library or a digital, like a lot of times you can get your library card with your physical library and they have a digital section where you can actually rent books to your Kindle or your audiobook thing to listen to. definitely look it up and check it out. Great stuff. I highly recommend it. My second one is, if you are going to a church and you have not gotten plugged into their small groups yet, do it. Because I think you'll be surprised, kind of like I was, to find out how you might get along with a lot of people more than what you thought I would. Pretty much when we were sitting there this past week and they were talking about how we need to have a night where we just talk about the Marvel movies and the theological things we can learn from them, I was like, I am there. Like, I will bring pizza. I will bring adult beverages like Mountain Dew Baja Blast, and we will talk about these and we'll get into it. I will bring episodes of Popcorn Theology on there and we'll talk about it. Like, I'm there for it. And then when someone else brought up how he read the Silmarillion, I'm like, cool. That's super nerdy. I can tell you all about me building model Gundams and not feel like I'll get judged, because reading the Silmarillion is on a whole other level than nerdy. It's like, it makes us Gundam builders look completely normal. I'm messing with you guys. I like to mess with the Lord of the Rings fans because they get so easily triggered on different things, as I found out on Twitter.
Of course, their fandom is totally lame.
I mean, dude, it's so overrated, right?
It is.
Like, come on.
It's a long-winded story about people walking.
Yes.
For like miles and miles and miles.
Yes. Just to return some jewelry. Like, ugh. You know what I'm saying? And there's way too much singing. Way too much singing in the books. Come on. You know what's a better series? You know what's a better series? Chronicles of Narnia. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say definitely. It. Way better. Way better.
Better parallels.
Yeah, you know, I love the whole universalism parallel thing that comes in one of the books. I'm messing with you guys if you couldn't tell. I'm waiting to get some angry emails about this, but you guys can follow me on Twitter at the Theologian and send all your angry tweets.
Before you go, I'm circling back. I'm sorry. You said something about Brandon Sanderson. Didn't he have like that series of Skyward? Wasn't there like a spin-off game for the Wii U? Like Skyward Sword?
Kind of, but it was set like way far in the past. So
I'll stop talking and let him wrap up his show now.
If y'all are not in the Facebook group, you need to be in. You need to get to know Jesse. He's a really cool dude. With that being said, if y'all like what we do here at TOG, again, you can support us on patreon.com. I've said that multiple times on the show. You can go check it out. You can join or you can go to the website, get extra content there. You can go to the YouTube channel, get extra content there. If you want to connect with the community, you can go to our Discord, Facebook group, Facebook page, Twitter. I feel like I'm forgetting something. The links to everything will be in your show notes. Just take a look through there. And if you see we're on a particular social media platform that you're on, join us and let's have some fun over there. But Jesse, again, man, thank you for coming on this episode of the Reformed Gamers, man. I hope people, do you want to share your socials, like where people can connect with you, or is it just tell them to go join the Facebook group and you'll troll them there?
That's about it. The Instagrams and Twitters and the tactics and all that. I'm not into that stuff. Fair
enough. You're a man of culture. You keep it simple. Fair enough. We are all old. We're all getting there. But with that being said, dear listeners, thank you for checking out this episode of the Reformed Gamers. And until next time, be a dear, keep it locked here, and we'll see you in the next episode.